Imagine this, in the shadowy halls of the Kremlin, a throne built on blood and billions is cracking under its own weight. Is Vladimir Putin, the man who ruled Russia with an iron fist for a quarter-century, finally losing his grip? Picture the dread in his eyes as once loyal billionaires vanish into exile, their fortunes snatched away like sand through fingers. For 25 years, Putin's bargain was clear-cut code of silence. Stay out of politics, oligarchs, and I'll make you richer than kings, plundering Russia's vast riches. In exchange, they swore unwavering obedience. But on February 24, 2022, that pact shattered when Russian tanks rolled into Ukraine. Western sanctions hit like a hammer on fragile glass, freezing mansions in London, seizing yachts in Sardinia, wiping out billions in a heartbeat. With this financial quake, Putin's image as unbeatable leader crumbled too. Old Kremlin rules eroded, the cogs of his absolute power began slipping. Shockingly, the real danger brewed not on distant battlefields, but right in his inner sanctum. The oligarchs, once thriving like vines in his shadow, were branching out. Some fled abroad, others hid in mute defiance, refusing blind commands. For Putin, the true enemy wasn't the West, but the ghosts haunting his palace corridors. To grasp this hushed mutiny, we must trace how his myth of invincibility unraveled. He vowed one promise to Russians and elites: total dominance. He unified a shattered nation post-1990s chaos, quelled Chechen uprisings with thunderous force, redrew borders against Georgia, seized Crimea without a single gunshot echoing, and defied the West's glare. Under his reign, oligarchs amassed fortunes, citizens found a semblance of stability and pride. Yet, the Ukraine invasion morphed into a ruinous finale. Kiev in 3 days? It dragged into debacles, weeks of blunders, thousands of soldiers lost, warships sinking with eerie groans beneath waves. The world gaped at the Kremlin's army's grim flaws. Every setback peeled another layer from Putin's facade as flawless tactician, exposing a misstep-laden figure tasting bitter defeat. This perception shift spread beyond trenches. Western sanctions flipped economic tables, oligarchs' overseas assets seized, accounts iced, vessels impounded, estates padlocked with frigid authority. Russia's precious funds diverted straight to war, minefields strewn with explosives, ammo dumps rumbling with impending blasts. In this turmoil, loyalty morphed into meaningless dust. Cracks in the Kremlin widened. To fathom this internal unraveling, we decode 3 betrayal tactics, cautionary tales of Putin's decaying regime at various levels. First, a tragic case: Mikhail Friedman, no mere magnate, but a 1990s titan, Alpha Bank's founder, brain behind Russia's top private lender. He styled himself a worldly London resident, a West-respected innovator, pouring billions into charities and globe-spanning boards. Ukraine's invasion upended his polished existence. War's outset sparked his fatal blunder, a plea letter calling invasion a tragedy, urging bloodshed's halt. Did this appease the West? No. For them, he was Putin's cornerstone enabler. Absolving him would sanction the entire machine. Sanctions froze his empire, banks, global holdings, house arrest caging him in London. Moscow's backlash was venomous. Kremlin's spin doctors labeled him a gutless turncoat, begging Western scraps. Shares in Alpha Bank teetered near collapse. Friedman's ordeal warned others: flirting with West's favor is lethal, they'll shun you, Putin won't relent. Yet, if Friedman stumbled into a snare, Oleg Tinkov ignited a blaze. Russia's tech novelty billionaire, Tinkoff Bank's creator, its pioneering digital lifeline. Always bold, noise-stirring, admiring Western freedoms, even battling cancer amid regime jabs on screens. War's start muted him briefly, but Ukraine's military woes provoked open fury. In April 2022, he decried conflict as mad folly, army inept, accusing Kremlin's ranks of idiocy. No mere critique, this stabbed the core. Response? Swift, savage. Kremlin's operatives cornered Tinkoff Bank: fire him or face nationalization, utter ruin awaits your lenders. The board buckled, axing Tinkoff. But torment escalated, forced to offload his billions in Tinkoff's shares. Buyer? Kremlin's puppet, Vladimir Putin. Price? Mere 3% of true value, a ruthless grab. Proof of the Kremlin's pact, wealth ties to fealty, dissent means destitution. Tinkoff abandoned fortunes, renounced citizenship to flee alive, an outcast. Lesson etched, speak, forfeit riches and self. Friedman snared, Tinkoff exiled. But Yevgeny Prigozhin redefined rebellion. Not an oligarch, but Putin's grim offspring, Wagner Group's brutal commander, Kremlin's shadowy enforcer. Ukraine's war pitted him against inept defense ministry, soldiers perished in droves due to shielded traitors. June 2023 unleashed his uprising, seizing Rostov bloodlessly, advancing on Moscow. Those 24 hours exposed Putin's nadir in decades. He couldn't crush Prigozhin then, talks were forced. Kremlin forgives nothing. 2 months later, his jet vanished into far skies, mid-flight from Moscow to St. Petersburg. No crash, a stark assassination, Russia's boldest modern slaying. Prigozhin's fate chilled oligarchs, defying the Tsar costs life. While his end roared publicly, subtler purges simmered within walls, wave of eerie demises. Lukoil chief Ravel Maganov's plunge from a Moscow hospital's 6th floor in September 2022, falling silently amid cries of defiance at war's start. Not isolated, dozens of executives, magnates, generals suicided, stumbled fatally, or succumbed to abrupt heart seizes since invasion's echo. This whisper elimination fanned internal terror, slip, and you vanish, not spectacularly slain, but erased like dust. These betrayals forged a Kremlin creed, Putin's ship sinks, boarding invites doom, escaping suicide. Sole survival? Secretly plot anew. Today, a faction emerges, pragmatic realists, challenging Putin's war delirium and fiscal folly. 3 pivotal figures shape Russia's future beyond him. Foremost, vocal pragmatist Oleg Deripaska, aluminum mogul, Rusel's founder. Once Putin's confidant, even kin-tied, he tasted sanctions' sting first in 2018, nearly drowning his realm. Personal bitter lesson, power's fragility. Deripaska veered pragmatic, urging regime shift toward West. Mocking isolation's folly. In rare 2023 interview, he lambasted diktat, called Putin unfortunate, sparking Kremlin trembles. Yet, he endured, fortunes unscathed? No, hints of covert defecting, wealth stashed offshore. His route? Public critiques masking shrewd autonomy, hedging bets against regime's fall. If Deripaska talks tough from afar, Alexei Kudrin embodies Kremlin's sane voice. Veteran economist, minister since Putin's dawn, brain behind 2008 crash recovery. Always loyal shadow, advising fiscal prudence. Ukraine's war enraged him, he voiced disgust in private, outrage in writings, nuclear brinksmanship stupidity. In 2023 essay, he deemed invasion grave miscalculation, urging ceasefire. Punishment? Ousted as economic chair, sidelined from decision rings. But Kudrin didn't crumble, he cultivated alliances, whispering dissent to emboldened elites. His strategy? Internal subversion, using ties to plant cracks, paving reform without exile. Kudrin warned, war drains Russia dry, true survival means pragmatic pivot. Deripaska, vocal, Kudrin, insider. Last, shadowy innovator Mikhail Kritikin, rare technocrat climbing state hierarchy. No old guard fossil, he modernizes Kremlin economies, evolving strategies westward. Kritikin, allied to pragmatists, critiques openly, Ukraine's path futile, sanctions bite deepening wounds. Post-2022, he hinted at new paths, trade pacts with non-Western foes, economic reinvention. His edge? Youthful, undaunted by purges, he maneuvers behind veils, positioning for transition. Together, these pragmatists sketch a post-Putin dawn, decentralized power, global integration. National revival without tyrants' chains. Can Putin halt this tide? Or will his empire dissolve in betrayal's whisper? As oligarchs plot silently, Russian fate hangs balanced, rise from ashes or plunge deeper into abyss. What twist awaits the Kremlin throne? Will loyalty's mirage shatter completely, birthing freedom's dawn? The air thickens with secrecy's scent, oiled leather from hidden briefcases, stale cigarette fumes and clandestine meets, the hushed rustle of papers outlining escapes. Real worlds collide. Will Putin's grab dream end in lonely downfall, his former allies laughing from afar? Or a resurgence cloaked in betrayal's veil? Prepare for revelations that could topple thrones. How will Russia's untold fracture unfold? Each step echoes distant thunder. Yet, in gilded halls, whispers turn to roars. The pack's end, mercy or madness? Feel the chill of change? In the heart of Russia, a complex web of loyalty and betrayal unfolds, revealing the faltering grip of a powerful leader. Vladimir Putin, for a quarter-century, formed an unbreakable alliance with the oligarchs, an agreement steeped in silence and mutual benefit. In exchange for their unwavering allegiance, these billionaires were given free rein to plunder the nation's resources, amassing staggering fortunes. However, this delicate balance shattered when Russian tanks rolled into Ukraine on February 24, 2022, igniting a cataclysm that would expose cracks in Putin's regime, as magnified by the West's devastating sanctions. The world watched as Putin's facade of invulnerability crumbled under the weight of unexpected military failures. What began as a swift campaign to conquer Ukraine devolved into chaos, with countless soldiers lost and naval vessels sunk, leaving the Kremlin's once heroic army stripped of its glory. The blunders uncovered a new reality: Putin, the mastermind, was now a leader grappling with defeat. The imposition of sanctions unraveled the economic tapestry of many oligarchs, freezing assets, confiscating luxury yachts, and locking the doors of opulent homes abroad. What once solidified loyalty now fostered uncertainty, as funds intended for wealth began to flow into battlefronts instead. As the foundations of Putin's power trembled, stories of betrayal emerged, illuminating the ominous change at the Kremlin's core. Three notable figures epitomized this disintegration. The first, Mikhail Friedman, was emblematic of the tragic downfall. An influential oligarch and founder of Alpha Bank, Friedman envisioned himself as a cosmopolitan businessman, revered in the West. Yet, when the war erupted, his desire to distance himself from Putin's regime led to dire consequences. He boldly labeled the conflict a tragedy, hoping this would shield him from sanctions. Yet, for the West, this was not enough. Friedman remained closely tied to a leader they vilified. His fortunes evaporated, assets frozen, as he became a target of hostility, accused of treachery at a time of war. This betrayal sent shockwaves through the oligarch community, illustrating a crucial lesson: loyalty is a precarious commodity in Putin's realm. If Friedman was ensnared, Oleg Tinkov took a more explosive route. The tech tycoon, known for his outspoken nature, faced swift repercussions when he condemned the war, branding it as absurd and questioning the competence of the Kremlin. His defiance was met with swift retribution. The Kremlin threatened to nationalize his successful digital bank unless he was ousted. In a cruel twist of fate, Tinkov was forced to sell his empire at a fraction of its worth, denouncing his Russian citizenship in a desperate bid for safety. Lastly, Yevgeny Prigozhin emerged as a wild card, reshaping the narrative of defiance. As a product of the system, he commanded the Wagner army, the Kremlin's private militia. However, witnessing the staggering losses among his troops due to strategic blunders ignited a brewing rebellion. His brief insurrection in June 2023 sent reverberations throughout the Kremlin, exposing a regime at its weakest moment in decades. Yet, in a chilling conclusion, he paid the ultimate price for his defiance, his life claimed in an apparent assassination. These accounts serve as harrowing reminders of the price of betrayal within the Kremlin's walls. As whispers of dissent grow louder, the oligarchs are caught in a relentless dilemma: remain loyal and face obliteration or stand against the tide for survival. Now, beneath the smokescreen of power, a new faction emerges, pragmatic realists questioning the direction of Putin's Russia. It remains unclear how this new alliance will redefine the landscape of power amid uncertainty and fear. What awaits the future of these influencers in a regime that has turned on its protectors? Will the echoes of betrayal resonate through the corridors of power, altering the course of Russia's history forever? In our previous chapter, we uncovered how Mikhail Friedman, a wealthy businessman revered in the West, faced dire consequences after Putin's invasion of Ukraine. Attempting to distance himself from the Kremlin, Friedman mistakenly believed he could still maintain his assets and reputation. This miscalculation led to his downfall, making it clear that the West would never forgive him, and the Kremlin would never forget. When Friedman published a letter decrying the war as a tragedy, he envisaged a clever way to skirt around sanctions. His intent was to convey a message that he was separate from Putin's regime. Unfortunately, for Western leaders, Friedman was still a prominent figure within Putin's inner circle, a primary accomplice profiting from the established system. His denouncement only amplified their resolve. Frozen accounts and assets followed, leaving him under house arrest in London. Back in Moscow, his plea for peace was perceived as treasonous, igniting a fierce backlash. State media viciously labeled him a coward, a traitor groveling before the West. On the precipice of losing everything, Friedman was a cautionary tale for his peers, that seeking favor from the West was a perilous path, leading to destruction. While Friedman faltered, another oligarch was ready to take bold risks. Oleg Tinkov, the daring entrepreneur behind Russia's pioneering digital bank, was not one to back down. Often loud and audacious, he spoke openly about state corruption, even during a personal battle with illness. Initially quiet during the onset of war, Tinkov eventually saw the truth unfolding in Ukraine. By April 2022, he unleashed a torrent of criticism, branding the war as irrational and attacking the military's incompetence. His words weren't merely criticism, they were a resounding insult to the very foundation of the Kremlin's power. The reaction from the authorities was swift and merciless. Tinkov's defiance triggered a chilling threat from the Kremlin: fire him or face the nationalization of his enterprise. How far would he be pushed before the consequences became unbearable? The stakes rose dramatically. With whispers of betrayal echoing in the palace, the foundations of the Kremlin began to tremble, revealing a stark reality, a looming reckoning for those who dared to challenge the status quo. In the depths of this turmoil, what would be the ultimate price for choosing truth over allegiance? As we turn the page, the atmosphere thickens with tension. Will loyalty remain paramount in a crumbling regime, or will the tides of change sweep the old guard aside? In the aftermath of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, a significant shift took place within the realm of power in Moscow. As tensions escalated, Oleg Tinkov, entrepreneur and founder of Tinkoff Bank, expressed his outrage at the conflict. He condemned the war as irrational, labeling the Russian army as ineffective, and openly criticized the Kremlin. His words were not mere sentiments, they were a direct assault on the very foundation of Putin's regime. The repercussions came quickly and ferociously. The Kremlin leaders swiftly contacted Tinkoff Bank, issuing a dire ultimatum: if Tinkoff wasn't dismissed, the authorities would seize control of the bank and obliterate its assets. The bank's board, caught in a vice of intimidation, forced Tinkoff out. But this punishment was more than just an executive decision. It represented industrial cannibalism, a ruthless maneuver by which the Kremlin compelled Tinkoff to liquidate his entire fortune, selling billions in shares at a paltry 3% of their true value. It was a blatant seizure disguised as a transaction. This brutal act underscored the Kremlin's loyalty pact: wealth is a privilege for those who remain silent. Speak out, and you lose everything. To evade total ruin, Tinkoff fled his homeland, forfeiting not just his fortune but his very identity as he renounced his Russian citizenship. His exile served as a stark lesson for the other oligarchs: dissent leads to destruction. Yet, amidst this atmosphere of fear and betrayal, an even darker narrative began to unfold with Yevgeny Prigozhin. Unlike the other oligarchs, Prigozhin was forged in the fires of Putin's regime. He was not simply an ally, but an executioner. Commanding the Wagner Group, a brutal paramilitary force, he became a crucial instrument of Kremlin power. However, as the war progressed, this creation began to turn against its creator. Prigozhin witnessed the staggering losses of his soldiers and, amid the chaos, discerned that the true enemies were not external, but the incompetence and corruption within the Ministry of Defense. In June 2023, Prigozhin's actions escalated from mere defiance to a full-blown rebellion when he seized Rostov and advanced towards Moscow. In that fleeting moment, the regime teetered on the brink of collapse. Putin, feeling the pressure of his weakened position, was forced to negotiate with his former ally, an unprecedented act of vulnerability. However, it was clear that the Kremlin's savage grip would not let such insubordination go unpunished. Just 2 months later, Prigozhin's plane mysteriously disintegrated in the Tver region, a brutal reminder that disloyalty to the Tsar leads only to death. This assassination sent a chilling message throughout the oligarch circles: betrayal would not merely cost you your position, it could cost you your life. Those oligarchs once bound by Putin's iron grip on wealth are now fracturing, their loyalties shattered by war's cruel toll. Sanctions have stripped away their fortunes, sinking yachts and freezing mansions in a symphony of lost opulence. Defeats in Ukraine have unveiled a crumbling facade, where the promise of invincibility now echoes like hollow thunder. Betrayals simmer in the shadows, from exiles fleeing with empty pockets to purges ending in whispered tragedies. Yet, amid this chaos, pragmatic voices rise, charting a perilous course toward a Russia beyond one man's rule. Oleg Deripaska, the aluminum titan behind Rusal, embodied this seismic shift. The ripple effects of these fractures have ignited a quiet revolution within Putin's fractured empire. Economic turmoil swirling like a choking dust storm, coupled with the bitter chill of isolation, pushes the elite to question their bonds. Sanctions, like invisible chains, have crushed empires overnight in 2018, a foretaste of the devastation unleashed. This silent erosion reveals how Russia's post-Putin horizon might dawn, shaped by players daring to whisper dissent. Who could have foreseen that the man once dining at Putin's table would shatter the silence with clenched fists against the wind? Oleg Deripaska, the aluminum magnate who forged Rusal from raw earth, stood among the Kremlin's most intimate circle. Family ties once bound him closely, but his story diverged dramatically. In 2018, Western sanctions hammered Rusal, nearly collapsing his sprawling domain into oblivion. He tasted the venom of economic warfare firsthand, the screech of failing machinery, the acrid scent of endangered livelihoods. Fast forward to February 24, 2022. As tanks rumbled across the border, igniting the inferno of invasion, Deripaska couldn't stifle his anguish. He denounced the conflict as sheer folly, a cataclysmic blunder echoing through boardrooms. He attacked misguided economic decrees with fiery passion. Even the central bank's abrupt rate hikes drew his scorn as reckless absurdity. How does one survive such audacity? Deripaska navigated the razor's edge, sparing the leader from direct assault. He targeted policies and fumbling bureaucrats, never the throne itself. His industrial fortress, Rusal, proved too vital to dismantle, a shield forged in the clang of forges and the heat of molten metal. Yet, if Deripaska roared like a storm, Vaget Alekperov embodied the quiet implosion, more devastating than any explosion. Alekperov, the Soviet-era titan who birthed Lukoil from the ashes of communism, reigned as Russia's oil behemoth. His empire spanned globes, fueled not by political favors but by the gush of crude and the hum of pipelines. Barely a month into the carnage in April 2022, Alekperov stunned the world by relinquishing his Lukoil crown. In Putin's rigid hierarchy, such a departure during wartime screamed defiance, a volcanic eruption in a frozen land. This act reverberated like a distant earthquake, cracking the foundations of obedience. Resignation in wartime? Unthinkable. It mocked the autocrat's unchallenged reign, a subtle but ferocious challenge. Without a single uttered word, Alekperov broadcasted his revolt against the quagmire of folly. Could this silent exodus herald a cascade of desertions, leaving the ship to sink in its own abyss? What secrets does this fissure conceal as shadows lengthen over the Kremlin? Is the thaw of defiance accelerating toward an unforeseen reckoning? The chill of uncertainty lingers, thick as smoke from extinguished ambitions. In a world where power dynamics shift like sand, the Kremlin's inner workings reveal a tale of loyalty, betrayal, and an emerging silence that speaks volumes. For 25 years, Vladimir Putin's relationship with Russia's oligarchs was marked by a simple yet precarious agreement: loyalty in exchange for unimaginable wealth. The oligarchs plundered the nation's resources, basking in their fortunes, while Putin maintained control over their actions. However, everything changed the day the first Russian tank crossed into Ukraine on February 24, 2022. As the West unleashed a torrent of sanctions, luxury yachts and sprawling mansions became distant memories, and the illusion of Putin's invincible reign began to crumble. The stronghold he had built was starting to falter, not from enemy forces, but from the very people who once thrived in his shadow. The oligarchs, once united in their allegiance, were now splintering into factions. Some sought refuge abroad, while others grew reluctant to follow orders without question. The danger no longer lurked on the front lines but stalked the halls of power surrounding the Kremlin. Understanding this shift demands examining how Putin's mythos of relentless power is unraveling. During his quarter-century rule, he promised unwavering control and stability, a promise that began to disintegrate amid the floundering invasion of Ukraine. The glittering facade of military might shattered as costly miscalculations led to staggering losses on the battlefield. This was not just a military quagmire, it was the unraveling of the intricate web that had previously bound the oligarchs to his regime. As defeat loomed, oligarchs learned rapidly that the Kremlin did not play by the old rules anymore. Mikhail Friedman, one of the original financial titans, made a grave misjudgment when he sought to distance himself from the Kremlin after voicing opposition to the war. This effort only deepened his vulnerability. The West saw him as complicit, and Putin's regime branded him a coward. The brutality of his situation sent shockwaves through the oligarchs, serving as a grim reminder of the dire consequences of dissent. Yet, while Friedman faltered, there was Oleg Tinkov, whose boldness ignited a different response. As an emblem of modernity in the tech-driven banking sector, he openly condemned the regime's actions, but this act of bravery soon drew the Kremlin's wrath. While the world witnessed the downfall of once mighty oligarchs, Vladimir Putin, the chairman of Norilsk-Nickel, emerged from the chaos as a master strategist. Known for his uncanny ability to seize opportunities in turmoil, Putin capitalized on the collapse around him. He deftly navigated sanctions and filled his coffers while others crumbled. Picking up the pieces from his rivals, he transformed adversity into power, preying on the weakened and ensuring his empire's growth. The darkness surrounding the Kremlin served only to illuminate Putin's rise. He had redefined the oligarch's role, becoming a construct of pragmatism amidst chaos. This new paradigm invites a chilling question: how do those who remain navigate a landscape where loyalty can lead to death? The answer lies in a subtle rebellion, a transition from overt defiance to a strategy of survival. The old allegiances have shifted from loyalty to the powerful czar to a quest for self-preservation. The marketplace of oligarchy is now volatile, and the stakes have never been higher. With echoes of rebellion ringing in the shadows, the question of stability continues to hang precariously in the air, leaving the future of Russia's elite cast in shadow and uncertainty. In this dark hour, the Russian elite faced a brutal revelation. Loyalty to Putin no longer meant riches or safety. Now, the burning question haunted them: how can we survive after him? Prigozhin's defiant march and deadly plane crash screamed the cost of open revolt. So, the elite shifted to subtle sabotage, a quiet war from within. How would you feel if the very wheels of war ground to a halt, not from enemy bombs, but from your own greed? Imagine the icy chill of betrayal creeping through Moscow's marble halls. The oligarchs tasted Western steel, and now their loyalty frays like a threadbare coat. Sanctions seized yachts and froze fortunes, leaving echoes of opulence shattered. Oligarchs like Deripaska, once flush with power, now whisper dissent. When Kremlin orders for aluminum and steel pour in, they nod obediently. But then, delays slink in, like shadows in the night. Supply chains tangle in red tape, chemicals linger at borders, workers feign illness with feverish groans. Everything looks lawful, yet production crawls to a snail's pace. They feed just enough to the front lines, stockpiling the rest offshore. Feel the frustration? Generals rage over missing ammo, the metallic clank of empty depots echoing failure. Tanks rust without parts, their engines silent. This passive poison weakens the war machine from inside. What if the oligarch's secret escapes were tearing apart Putin's empire, right under his nose? Picture the scent of conspiracy in London's stuffy offices, deals trading freedom for betrayal. One wrong move, and Friedman's fate awaited, a trap of frozen assets and exile. But the elite learned her cruel game. No more public appeals. Now, whispers flow through hired lawyers in Washington and Brussels. Expensive firms maneuver, pleading for sanction strikes. They offer secrets in return: Russia's vulnerabilities, military blunders, economic cracks. Sense the adrenaline? Voices muffled in phone calls, papers rustling with coded intent. It's not just riches, these leaks empower the West, chipping at the Kremlin's armor. Could the real storm brewing be the oligarchs' bets on a traitor-free tomorrow? Envision alliances forming in dimmed rooms, the bitter tang of ambition fueling risky gambles. Seeing Putin's reign crumbling, they hunt post-war allies. Technocrats emerge as fragile bridges, weak links in the chain. Mikhail Mishustin and Sergei Kiriyenko stand as beacons, reforming bureaucracy and staving off collapse. Hear the murmurs of plotting? Economic chaos avoided by sleight of hand, while hopes for change flicker like candles in a draft. Mishustin digitalizes the sluggish system, Kiriyenko navigates sanctions fog. These pacts could flip the script, staking everything on a new dawn. Yet, as alliances tighten, who will claim the throne after the fall? The air thickens with whispered plots, each decision a razor edge. Will pragmatism prevail or erupt into chaos? Stay vigilant, the echoes of rebellion grow louder. If the elite's shadows unite against the tyrant, what shadows lurk behind them? The silent screams of twists unseen. In the ongoing saga of power dynamics within the Kremlin, a new generation of leaders is emerging. Dmitry Patrushev and Alexei Dumin are two names shaping this evolution. Dmitry holds a significant position as the Minister of Agriculture and is categorized as a dynastic successor. He is the son of Nikolai Patrushev, a prominent figure in the establishment. This is a strategic attempt to cement the Siloviki's influence through familial legacy. However, the most discussed figure in this regard is Alexei Dumin. Known as the Kremlin's shadow heir, Dumin has gained Putin's unwavering trust. His ascent began as deputy defense minister, where he played a pivotal role in the annexation of Crimea in 2014. Following his successful leadership, he was appointed as the governor of the Tula region. What's crucial is that within the Kremlin, three distinct factions are now battling for supremacy. The facade of Vladimir Putin's unassailable power has crumbled. The loyalty pact, once the bedrock of his rule, has been dismantled by the relentless pressure of economic sanctions. This shaking of the oligarchic foundations has set off a fierce, ongoing struggle for dominance in the Kremlin. Now, only three outcomes seem possible: a brutal purge reminiscent of Stalin's era, a meticulously orchestrated palace coup, or a chaotic collapse similar to the tumultuous 1990s. Each scenario presents a dire reality where the once mighty leader finds himself cornered, pursued not only for the throne but also for his very life. His fortress now houses the very wolves he nurtured, caught in a deadly game of survival. In a dramatic twist of fate, the fragility of Vladimir Putin's regime was unmasked during a critical 24-hour period, revealing deep cracks within the once seemingly invincible leadership. This moment of vulnerability arose when Yevgeny Prigozhin, the notorious figure behind the Wagner army, challenged the Kremlin's might with shocking audacity. Just 2 months later, his plane met a fiery end over the Tver region, seemingly orchestrated to send a chilling message: betrayal of the Tsar incurs deadly consequences. This incident was no mere accident. It became one of the most notorious assassinations in contemporary Russian history. Prigozhin's demise resonated profoundly with the oligarchs, making it clear that loyalty equated to survival, while dissent led to grave peril. Yet beneath the surface of this striking execution lay a more insidious purge, characterized by a wave of unaccounted deaths among those who dared to voice their opposition to the Kremlin. One of the most poignant instances was the fate of Ravel Maganov, the president of Lukoil. His company stood out as one of the first to advocate for peace as the war raged on. Maganov met his end in a fall from the sixth floor of an elite Moscow hospital in September 2022, an echo of the fates endured by numerous executives, oligarchs, and armed forces leaders who've mysteriously perished since the onset of the conflict. This eerie pattern stirred fear among the elite, silencing critics without the spectacle of public execution. The implications were dire. The oligarchs recognized that remaining loyal to Putin's sinking ship was equivalent to signing their death warrants, while attempting to escape the chaos was nothing short of a death sentence too. In this environment of escalating dread, they had no choice but to turn away from their captain. A clandestine power pivot began to unfold, paving the way for a faction of pragmatists emerging to question Putin's reckless governance and the economic calamity it heralded. Leading this new group was Oleg Deripaska, the aluminum mogul who once enjoyed intimate ties within Putin's inner circle. Having tasted the bitterness of Western sanctions back in 2018, Deripaska's journey took a different turn. Unlike others, he learned early on that the wave of sanctions could bring an empire to its knees almost overnight. How does one navigate through treachery and uncertainty when the very foundations of power begin to crumble? What awaits Deripaska as he dares to step further into the turbulent waters of opposition? Can he steer the ship away from the brink, or will he, too, be consumed by the very storm he seeks to tame? For a quarter of a century, the rule behind the Kremlin's closed doors was simple. Vladimir Putin's wealth for loyalty pact with the oligarchs mirrored a sacred oath of silence: stay out of politics, and I'll make you the richest man in the world. This agreement let oligarchs plunder Russia's natural resources freely. In exchange, they swore utter, unwavering allegiance to Putin. But the deal shattered when the first Russian tank rolled across the Ukrainian border on February 24, 2022. The West's unbreakable sanctions obliterated that unspoken contract. Luxurious yachts in Sardinia vanished. Majestic mansions in London froze in time. Billions in wealth evaporated overnight. With this economic cataclysm, Putin's 25-year halo of invincible leadership crumbled. Old rules no longer held in the Kremlin. The machinery that forged his absolute power started slipping out of gear. This downfall erupted not from foreign battlefields, but from inside Putin's own circle. Billionaires once thriving in his shadow now splintered apart. Some fled the country quietly. Others lapsed into eerie silence. A few dared to question every command without blind faith. From Putin's vantage, the gravest threat shifted, no longer the West, but shadows creeping through his palace halls. To unearth this quiet mutiny, we must unravel how the myth of Putin's unbeatable command, built meticulously over years, began to disintegrate. For 25 relentless years, Putin vowed one thing to Russians and elites: total dominance. He was the Iron Hand reviving the nation post-1990s chaos, quelling Chechen uprisings, redrawing Georgia's frontiers, seizing Crimea bloodlessly, and defying the West's might. Oligarchs amassed fortunes under his protective shadow. Citizens clutched at fleeting stability and shreds of pride. Yet, the Ukrainian assault morphed into a final, devastating act, not to elevate his legend, but to annihilate it. Promises of Kiev's fall in 3 swift days twisted into prolonged disasters, weeks of blunders, thousands of slain troops, warships plunging into the depths. The globe witnessed the Kremlin's military facade crack wide. Every setback peeled back layers of the flawless tactician mask around Putin. The once peerless ruler became a misstep-maker, savoring bitter defeat. This perceptual quake extended beyond trenches. Western sanctions wrecked economic equilibrium. Oligarchs' overseas assets seized, frozen accounts, yachts impounded, villas locked tight. Funds fueling the war machine now funneled straight to battlefronts, mines and munitions, not bulging coffers. Loyalty lost flavor here. That's when Kremlin fractures emerged into view. To grasp this internal meltdown, decode 3 betrayal tactics. These 3 cases highlight system decay and multi-level treason. First, the tragic tale of Mikhail Friedman, a 1990s billionaire icon, Alpha Bank's creator, Russia's biggest private bank's vision. He styled himself a global citizen, London-based, Western-respected philanthropist, donating billions to charities, advising international panels. Putin's Ukraine invasion wrecked his delicate world. War's outset saw Friedman stumble, publishing a plea for peace, labeling the conflict a calamity, urging an end to bloodshed. His gambit? Signal to the West, I'm not Putin. But it backfired. Western eyes saw him as Putin's payday facilitator, pardoning him pardoned the regime. No mercy, wealth, banks, assets iced, house arrest in London. Moscow's rage flared, Friedman's appeal? Desertion in wartime. Propagandists branded him spineless traitor kowtowing to foes. He teetered on losing Alpha Bank stakes. His ordeal hammered home a grim truth, courting the West is death, it won't absolve you, the Kremlin forgets nothing. Friedman trapped himself. Then came Oleg Tinkov, new-gen tech titan founding Russia's pioneering digital bank. Provocative, West-admiring, he blasted the regime on social media, even battling cancer. War erupted, he stayed mum initially. But Ukraine's military flop clarified, he lashed out bluntly. April 2022, called the war mad, irrational, Russian army inept, Kremlin fools. Not critique, blunt assault. Kremlin struck back fast, ruthless. Administrators muscled Tinkov Bank, fire him or nationalize and ruin. Board axed his job. Hunger grew. Kremlin orchestrated industrial cannibalism, forcing Tinkov to shred billions in shares at pitiful value, just 3% real worth, to Putin, the new Kremlin pawn. No sale, theft. Proof of the pact, rich via loyalty, dissent? Gone. Tinkov dumped billions, renounced citizenship, exiled to survive. Lesson etched, speak, forfeit wealth and self. Friedman snared, Tinkov banished. But Yevgeny Prigozhin? He shattered Betrayals' mold. Not oligarch, but Putin's grim spawn, Wagner's chief, dirty ops maestro, Kremlin's shadow fist. Ukraine war turned beast on maker. Prigozhin watched thousands die under defense ministry bungling, Putin shielded bunglers. June 2023, not betrayal, rebellion. Seized Rostov bloodlessly, marched on Moscow. 24 hours of regime nadir. Putin negotiated halt. But Kremlin forgives not. 2 months later, Prigozhin's jet erupted midair from Moscow to St. Petersburg, Tver skies ignited. Assassination blatant, Russia's modern nadir. Message to oligarchs, betray the Tsar, pay with life. Noisy execution, resounding. Yet silence brewed deeper. Suspicious deaths wave engulfed. Lukoil's Ravel Maganov, demanding war's end at outbreak, disobeyed unforgivably. September 2022, plummeted 6th floor window at Moscow clinic. Not solo. War's start, dozens of executives, oligarchs, generals, suicided, tripped fatally, heart-attacked suddenly. Quiet purge outstripped clamor, fueled inner terror. Air? Vanish utterly. These betrayals and purges birth new Kremliner equation, Putin's ship sinks, bored for death, abandoned suicidal. One survival, secret new path behind captain's guise. Emerged pragmatic realists, questioning war's folly, economic ruin. 3 pivotal shape Russia's post-Putin dawn. Iron VTK aluminum czar Deripaska, homework Rust founder, inner circle intimate, once wed to Putin's kin. Yet distinct, pre-war sanctions taste, 2018 Rizal hit bankrupted realms. Personal agony. Sanctions iron clasp jammed billions. Deripaska arrived bankruptcy's brink, flashback surfaces, chilly Moscow winter 2018, freezer air biting skin like razor wind, sanctions clang like chains clanking in dark cells, scent of burning wood from hidden fires. Desperate wrung U.S. advisors, phones trembling in grip, whispering hopes shattered as empires teetered. What if the man Putin handpicked to steady Russia's tottering economy holds secret alliances with rivals plotting his downfall? Dive into this labyrinth of betrayals, where loyalty's whisper turns lethal poison, no more than 400 characters. First off, the desperate exile of the aluminum czar unfolded under global scrutiny, sparking whispers of unholy pacts. How do mid-level bureaucrats morph into silent kings, ready to seize thrones in the chaos? Picture oppressed archives silent, yet pulsing with forbidden knowledge. Second, Tinkoff clung to his empire's remnants, but the Kremlin's whisper warned of deeper voids. Yet, a hushed power play emerged, where Russia's breadbasket minister harbors dynastic dreams. Third, the Security Council's shadows cast longer than daylight, with hawks circling for blood. But wait, a chilling riddle: does Russia's prime minister really code the nation's secrets, or do his loyalties fracture in hidden fractures? Feel the grip of unspoken fears tightening. Mikhail Mishustin, Russia's hand-picked premier. Putin tasked him with untangling bureaucracy's knotty mess, modernizing taxes amid war's grip. His new burden? Shielding the economy from Western sanctions' stranglehold. Sergei Kiriyenko, meanwhile, steered domestic fires as ideology's mastermind, overseeing Russification in seized Ukrainian lands. How these faceless clerks ascend to crowns? View them as placeholders, powerless alone, puppets dancing for greater cliques. They stabilize eras of flux. Without personal clout, they're temp kings for ambitious factions. Flashback: stale office air mingles with cigarette smoke's acrid bite, fluorescent hums like distant thunder, fingers drumming cold desks impatiently, wondering who pulls the strings. But what secrets lurk in the breadbasket minister's gaze, a dynasty in waiting? Rhetorical shiver down your spine: can one son of KGB soil birth both stability and storm? Sensory hints of soil's earthy dampness cling, as whispers echo unanswered. The second faction, Siloviki, embodies Russia's hardcore. Scornful of technocrat softness or oligarch greed, they see this strife as survival's roar, warhawk zest for all-out Western clash, Stalin-esque purges at home. Their nexus? Nikolai Patrushev, Security Council chief, Putin's KGB confidant from 1970s Leningrad frosts. West tanks hail him as Putin's sharper mind, hawkier than the leader. Their edge? FSB Sarg Alexander Bortnikov, wielding vast surveillance webs, spying, detaining, erasing foes and felons quietly. Checkmate strategy? Amid Putin's abrupt exit, chaos fuels ascent, cloaked as security's guard. Representing a harsher, more martial, estranged Russia. Not oligarch gold packs, but intel's command reigns. Feel the tension coil: what brutal purge awaits those straying from this path? The air thickens with guarded breaths, keys clacking like threats in dim vaults. Visualize the march to Rostov's silent echo, yet now, a new siege brews in shadows. Third, the enigmatic future prince's clique rises. These are fresh heirs, groomed by Putin's forge itself. End of part 3. Foreshadowing cliff: will these groomed successors shatter chains or forge new iron bonds? Hear the faint, ominous creak of doors closing in gilded chambers. WND of part. The intrigue deepens as alliances weave in unexpected directions, pulling Putin's legacy toward an abyss. Climax nears with Prigozhin's explosive end, yet echoes linger in sanctioned silence. Optimistic spark? Deripaska emerged stronger, affecting sanctions shrewdly, positioning himself as pragmatist pioneer. He now questions war's cost indirectly, urging alternatives. Rhetorical jab: is this survival savvy, humiliating warmongers as blind? Picture champagne bubbles popping like sanctions vows bursting. Conclusion arc builds: fledgling dissent nurtures hope, as oligarchs and technocrats meld covertly. Opportunity brews: Poland, UAE hosts as escape havens. With pragmatist ascendant, Russia's will could turn from ruin to rebirth. Emotional peak: whispers of freedom's light piercing Kremlin's dark. Cliffhanger twist: if the emperor dances naked now, who sews his robes for tomorrow? Freeze frame on looming fractures. In the depths of the Kremlin's shifting sands, where Putin's grip once seemed eternal, a new storm brews, pragmatic realists clawing their way out of the shadows, rewriting Russia's battered path. Fueled by sanctions' bite and leadership's unraveling, these power players chart secret courses, humiliating the regime's hawks as reckless fools stumbling in the fog. But danger lingers like a whispered curse. Recall the explosive fallout from Prigozhin's march on Moscow. A rebellion that nearly toppled Putin's throne, only to end in a skybust of betrayal. Now, amid the ashes, a subtle pivot emerges, technocrats rising as fragile caretakers, potentially paving the way for smooth transitions in a chaotic Game of Thrones. Can a group of faceless bureaucrats really hold the reins while wolves circle? Imagine the stale chill of corridors lined with filing cabinets, the faint buzz of fluorescent lights humming like distant accusations. Where would that leave the blood-soaked Siloviki generals, their dreams of purge exposed as lunacy? Enter Mikhail Mishustin, Russia's prime minister, anointed by Putin to untangle the bureaucracy's relentless tangle and revamp tax systems for the digital age. As war erupted, his role morphed into a desperate firewall against Western sanctions ravaging tides, battling to keep the economy from splintering apart. Meanwhile, Sergei Kiriyenko stands as the Kremlin's cerebral force for internal affairs. This technocrat oversees ideological levers, orchestrating Russification efforts in occupied Ukrainian territories, ensuring control over the narrative and the soil. Yet, these two operate without personal empires. Viewed as mere placeholders, they lack inherent muscle. Candidates for puppet leadership, they could serve as stabilizing figures in turbulent power vacuums, caretakers guided by hidden hands. Flashback floods in, the sharp scent of stale coffee tingling nostrils, papers shuffling like windswept leaves, cold metal chairs biting into thighs as urgent memos drop onto desks. But here's the provocative riddle that burns. Are these bureaucratic ghosts truly neutral guardians, or sleeper agents unraveling threads even now? Feel the unspoken dread creeping up spines. Shifting gears, Deripaska's rebirth from sanctions jaws granted him a vantage to criticize, yet indirectly, a pragmatic whisper in the wilderness. Amid economic ruin, a riveting twist unfolds, technocrats veneer as the calm before a maelstrom, where paper pushers plot greater coups. The second faction, the Siloviki warriors, fuel Russia's fiery core. Dismissing technocrats' caution or oligarchs' cravings, they frame the war as existential carnage, demanding unyielding combat against the West and Stalin-style sweeps inside Russia to cleanse dissent. Their commander? Nikolai Patrushev, head of the Security Council, Putin's KGB ally since frosty Leningrad days in the 1970s. Western analysts paint him as the sharper blade, even more unrelenting than Putin himself. The group's enforcer? FSB Chief Alexander Bortnikov, commanding an ironclad apparatus of oversight, tracking, imprisoning, and erasing critics or opportunists in silence. Their masterstroke? Harness chaos for a takeover, masquerading as national protectors should Putin vanish abruptly. This clique heralds a darker, more militarized, isolated Russia. Trading oligarch fortunes for security agencies' unchallenged rule. Imagine the metallic tang of fear in overheated rooms, boots echoing like impending doom, rhetorical sting. Do these hawks truly soar above weakness, or will their rigid wings shatter,